So, we made it. We made it to the end of this unit. And now it's time to review for the test, okay? So, between 1200 and 1450, we see a lot of major trends during this time period. One of the biggest trends is that you see these states go from being fragmented to now centralized. And as they begin to form centralized governments, they then begin to expand. So this time period is one of trends where large states grow and small states decline. On the same token, that also meant that settled areas with cities and towns developed and became stronger as nomadic settlers began to lose influence. We see all kinds of state building all over the world. Certainly, our examples are going to be the Song Dynasty in China that grows from trade, just like some of the large West African kingdoms. Some of the kingdoms, like the Middle East and South Asia, are going to be formed by Islam. So you get these large kingdoms formed by religion, and then in Europe, it's trade. Again, we see that Europeans begin to trade with each other and with the Middle East, and as a result, this also leads to a time period of large state building. So let's look at it. Let's review our different cultures, see how they compare with each other. So, as I said before, one of the largest trends going on at this time is state building and new empires rising up. So, for instance, you still have the Song Dynasty in China. It continued to grow and create new innovations. You have some, that decline. For instance, the Abbasid dynasty declines in Baghdad. It fell due to invaders and shifts in trade. But following that decline, you get this rise of these new large empires or Muslim states in Africa, the Middle East, and in Spain. In South and Southeast Asia, you get these very large empires that used trade to build strong states, while, for instance, the Delhi Sultanate in northern India was more land-based. In Africa, you have the rulers of Mali who created an empire that was bigger and more centralized than any other empire in Africa. In the Americas, the Aztecs formed a tributary empire that relied on a strong military. The Inca Empire had an elaborate bureaucracy. In contrast, most of the other areas in Mesoamerica lacked centralized states. In Europe, feudal ties declined as central states began to develop. This development was more clear in Western Europe, for example, in France and England, than in Eastern Europe. And Japan, unlike most states, became more decentralized, and feudalism grew as it declined in other areas. So one similarity throughout the world that, during this time period was that religion tended to be a unifying force, and it tended to support large state building. It helped unify people of diverse populations, and usually empires by nature are very diverse. You're conquering your neighbors, you're conquering people with different cultures, different languages, sometimes even different religions. And what we find is a melding of these. A lot of times rulers would choose a religion and enforce that religion in their area because it served as a way of unifying people of diverse languages and cultural backgrounds. Other states were also strengthened by religion. In China, the Confucian belief system was closely tied to civil service in the government. The Song dynasty relied on Confucian scholars to run a powerful, enduring bureaucracy. No other state had such a well-established an extensive system for conducting government affairs across such a large territory. The ability to implement laws and carry out imperial decrees was a key part of state building in China. Neo-Confucianism spread to Korea and Japan, allowing rulers in these East Asian regions to justify and consolidate their political power as well. Similarly, rulers in South and Southeast Asia relied on Hinduism and Buddhism to aid them in strengthening their states. In Europe, the relationship between the Roman Catholic Church and state building was somewhat different. At times, the church was part of the state building process. However, because European states were so weak for most of the Middle Ages, the church had provided the structure needed for organizing society. Then, between 1200 and 1450, as more powerful states emerged in France and the Holy Roman Empire, the church sometimes became a rival power. Another trend was the spread of major religions. During this time period, it resulted in the influence of religion over wide areas. Islam, Buddhism, and Christianity all encouraged their followers to convert non-believers. Therefore, missionary activity was an important factor in the decline in the practice of local religions in places such as Sub-Saharan Africa, Southeast Asia, and East Asia. In South Asia, converts to Islam increased partly as a result of military invasions by Islamic armies from Central Asia. However, Hinduism remained the predominant religion in South Asia, setting the stage for different periods of conflict and tolerance between followers of Islam and Hinduism. Trade networks in the Indian Ocean, South China Sea, East and Central Asia, and across the Sahara Desert helped to spread religions as commercial activity increased. So another thing is that we saw a lot of these countries begin to state build using trade. Trade was fueled by these larger empires centralizing, and so you see an increase of trade, cross-cultural exchange of technology and innovation during this period, crop production, paper manufacturing, the use of porcelain, steel, iron production. Really important was the spread of gunpowder. So all of this is moving along as you begin to see armies move. I mean, they're carrying a lot of the innovation as well. Europe benefited the most from these exchanges. I mean, they were getting technology from Africa, the Middle East, and Asia. A negative impact could mostly be felt on the nomadic people. Nomadic people played a key role during the period of 1200 to 1450. The Mongols ruled over a significant area, leading to cross-cultural exchanges. You also have the Seljuk Turks and the Ottoman Turks, who will replace the Mongols and build very large empires. The creation of these empires would be the last interaction between settled and nomadic people. By 1450, the role of the nomads in commerce and in cross-cultural exchange decreased as they were replaced by organized groups of merchants and trading companies. As you're going to see as we go through the rest of this year, that I really love charts. So here's a chart that just sums up the 4 types of state building that we see from 1200 to 1450. We have the processes, the description, and the examples. So first of all, the emergence of new states. States arise in a land once controlled by another empire. So for instance, we see this in the Middle East with the Mamluk Empire, the Seljuk Empire, and the Delhi Sultanate. We also get the revival of former empires, new leadership, continued or rebuilt a previous empire with some innovations. For instance, we see this in the Song dynasty that was based on the Han. We see this in the Mali Empire that was based on Ghana, and the Holy Roman Empire that was based on Rome. Then you get a synthesis of different traditions. This is where states adapt foreign ideas to local traditions. So we see this in Japan, we see this in Delhi, and we see this with Neo-Confucianism. And then the last type of state building is called expansion in scope. This is when an existing state expands its influence through conquest, trade, or other methods. We see this with the Aztecs in Mesoamerica, the Incas in South America, city-states in East Africa, and city-states in Southeast Asia. And there you go. So lastly, let's talk about patriarchy and religion. So social organization in most cultures remain patriarchal. However, cultures varied from one place to the next. For instance, in Europe, if you were a nun, you could live a life free from patriarchy. Of course, you were isolated and there's all kinds of rules, and you're still ruled by the local priest, and then there's all kinds of things that happen to nuns when a priest gets involved, but we're not going to talk about that right now, not today. But anyway, so nuns could become free from the system. And then, for instance, in India, you had Jainists and Buddhists where women could contribute to the religion. Certainly, we see in South Asia and Southeast Asia, women's roles increase as we get to 1450. In contrast, in China, women lost independence. The custom of foot binding became more common, and it becomes more firmly entrenched in a patriarchal society. And that's it for our review. You did good. So far, you've taken multiple choice tests. You've taken an SAQ. Next, you're going to work on a DBQ, and that will be your exam. So good job, children.